The point is you're giving consumers now a way to interact with your brands versus your typical robotic, hi, welcome to the brand, here's 10% off. Let's speak to customers just like we would speak to our friends. I can speak about myself. When I'm looking at a product for $500, which I do not purchase, I would like to take a little bit more time to like read reviews, understand what's the pros and cons. Then it's a little bit easier to just target those customers and say, okay, you are viewing this product. Don't forget, this sells out super, super quick.
Q4 is the busiest time of year for e-commerce brands. And if there's one thing that rings true year in and year out, it's that you have to get your shoppers' attention quickly. SMS makes it easier than ever to connect with customers through their phones. Trusted by brands like Brooklinen, Native, Fanjoy, and more, Postscript is the go-to text message marketing platform for brands on Shopify and Shopify Plus. Learn more and get started with a free 30-day trial at postscript.io. Welcome to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. As always, I am your host, Jeremy Horowitz, and today I am rejoined by an incredible guest. I had such a good conversation with him over the summer that we had to have him back to help you get ready for the new year. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Wassim Dakik, the Enterprise Success Manager at Postscript. Wassim, how's it going?
I am doing great, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, all things SMS and e-commerce.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it today. But for anybody who didn't listen to our previous episode, which you totally should, it was a masterclass on how to get really well ramped up for SMS. Can you give the quick background on how you got into this crazy game of e-com?
Okay, so quick background. I studied e-commerce from my master's. From there, I worked at Twilio and then Shopify. So I really got an understanding of how telecom works, but also how does that mix up and match with the e-commerce world being at Shopify. Then took that experience and I brought that over to Postscript, where I am now a team lead for a customer success team. So really working with our team of strategists to help grow Shopify merchants with their SMS strategy.
Awesome. I also I guess I didn't catch this the first time, but the market caps and the companies that you've worked for, I feel like those are the two hottest, two of the hottest SaaS public companies. So it's really interesting. I mean, maybe you're onto something. Maybe Postscript will be number 3 on that banner.
Yeah, some merchants say that to me. They ask me questions like, "Wassim, you worked at I worked at Oracle previously, which is already
you're just
a very
stacking
massive."
them up.
Well, like growing up in Ireland and Dublin, like a lot of the large tech companies are there, so there was a lot of options. But I did do a lot of research before picking any company that I decided to work with, Twilio and Shopify, of course. And I believe Postscript is the big SMS company that's going to really take off. So. Working hard to make sure we get there, just like Shopify and Twilio.
Nice. Well, I know we're going to dive into it. I know we've got a lot of good things to cover to help brands. BFCM was huge for most brands. Some brands are still trying to pick up kind of some of the sales that they didn't quite capture then. So we just had a massive traffic event. We've been acquiring leads if we've been doing this properly since the summer, September, October. So what are some things and what are some actionable tactics that brands can do to really make the most of those lists that they just acquired as we're pushing to things like last ship date, New Year's, and then obviously into 2022?
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a great period for a lot of merchants at Shopify when it comes to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Really good year this year. But with saying that, since September, October, up until now, a lot of brands have been growing their list, whether it's on-site, off-site, through social. So now a lot of brands have tons of new subs. And I think the real idea here now is to understand, okay, I've got an influx of a bunch of new subscribers, but which one of these subscribers are just here for the discounts, and which ones are actually loyal customers to the brand? They really like our brand, they're engaged with our brand, and then how do we turn them into a repeat customer, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 time, 5 more products purchased versus someone who's just here for a discount. So kind of really focusing on that and understanding what can we do with these new subs, and the best thing to do is really to segment them and really take from those new subs that you've recently got from September all throughout Black Friday. Now we have a bunch, let's say 10,000. What do we now do with them? How do we communicate with them? Let's put them in separate buckets by segmenting them. And then we can I think, reach out to them with specific messaging that tailors towards their goals, which is maybe to get a discount or to be a more loyal customer.
Definitely. So, what are some triggers or what are some ways that you recommend that are really helpful for brands to start to create those segments to identify who are those maybe just discount shoppers or people who just came for the holidays versus those loyal customers who are really going to create a lot of value?
Yeah, for sure. I think one good step a lot of brands can do, if they really want to like get strategic with this part of it, is look at what was done last Black Friday, like 2020. Do you have subscribers who joined signed up for your SMS, bought something 2020 Black Friday, but haven't purchased anything all year? Maybe they haven't clicked at anything. So that's one way of like looking at the previous ones and getting an idea of like, okay, we got new subs Black Friday 2020. How did that compare to the subs that we got Black Friday 2021? Are they clicking on all the campaigns? Are they opening them recently? Are they going through the other automations that we have? Possibly a welcome series. Are they texting back? Are they texting keywords? And I think using those filters within your segmenting tool, you can really kind of get an idea of like, is this person someone who's interacting with my brand, going through all the different stages, versus someone who's I've just signed up to your SMS, haven't really gone through any of the other automations, haven't really clicked on any of your campaigns. I've literally just bought and I've gone silent. So kind of using those segmenting filters to understand who's come in when they've arrived on our SMS platform or in our SMS channel, what are they doing, where are they clicking, and then from there start building on a persona of this is someone who's more loyal versus someone who's just come in for a discount.
Yeah, definitely. And I always find the holiday shopper segment is a segment that's so often overlooked. I think it was very heavily in like our holiday prep segment is like create that. And like if you didn't do that this year, do it now so that's ready for you for next year. Because there's always those people who do that. I think it's really interesting of like the engagement of the other flows and other in-channel pieces that I feel like is a tried and true tactic that maybe a lot of brands have moved away from. How also are you viewing engagement? Because I think the tough piece that I always think of engagement is there's no like classic open in
Yeah,
an SMS message. So is it just that they're receiving messages and they haven't unsubscribed? Is it a certain click engagement? Like, is it a keyword? Like, is there a value do you place to those level of engagements? Like, how do you really think about that engagement metric and what a brand should prioritize and focus?
for sure. I think from campaigns clicked is a good way to look at it. Like I've sent, since you've subscribed, I've sent 5 campaigns. You've clicked on all of them, which I think is a good way of looking at it. But of course, you can't see the open rates when it comes to SMS. But what a lot of brands are starting to do is adding keywords into their campaigns or automation, or even when they initially sign up and say, posing the question like, "Hey, welcome to our brand X, Y, and Z," whatever you want to say. If you just want to receive exclusive offers, text this keyword. And when they text that keyword, they're then funneled out. And then when I go to send a campaign, which might be non-transactional, discussing something around like the founder's story or anything got to do with the brand, I won't text it to those individuals straight away. I would just text them because they replied to the keyword. So I think using keyword strategy within specific automations campaigns, you can really use that to your advantage as a merchant and understand, okay, can't fully see if they're opening everything, but if they're replying back to this keyword, they've given me an idea that they just want to receive this type of content from my brand, for example.
Yes. Oh, that's like the thing I love about SMS. The like choose your own adventure and pick what you want, and that real conversational element to it. And so, like, how are you thinking about conversational commerce? I feel like it's been a hot topic for a couple of years, but with the real rise of SMS this year, and a lot of brands finally starting to adopt it, and finally starting to really get into these more like actually figuring out how to program keywords into their
Yeah.
entire programs. Like, how are you thinking about where that's going to go in the new year?
Yeah, for sure. It's good. And it kind of reminded me there of like as a consumer, you choose which way you want to interact with your brand. It reminds me of back in the day, those books, Goosebumps?
Yes.
You used to read them. Some of the books at the end had like, go to page 55 to enter the door on the left, for example. But the point is, you're giving consumers now a way to interact with your brands instead of going through your typical funnel of like, you get the welcome series and then you go here and then you go to the next stage. You're now giving consumers kind of their own choice of what they want to receive, what kind of content that they want to receive from the brand, which I really like. And I've seen over the last couple of months and going into Black Friday, a lot more brands are focusing on that conversational piece. Like, let's speak to customers just like we would speak to our friends, through text message. Get them to open the message and say, "Oh, this is an interesting question," or "This is an interesting way that this brand's communicating with me." Just have more of a conversation versus your typical robotic. Hi, welcome to the brand. Here's 10% off. I am over Black Friday, we've seen a lot more brands move away from that and get really implementing their own voice into their SMS, and it is really, really working well. They're killing it.
Yeah, I always find it so funny that like you never send a text message to someone else that you know and not want to get like it would be so weird to not get a response from like a friend or a family member after you send them a text. And I feel like brands are like so okay with that. It's just like it's an interesting mental thing for me. But so I love that use case of like I go into the welcome flow, what am I interested in? And I branch from there. Are there any other cool use cases that you've seen at either different parts of the funnel or different use cases within the welcome flow that have been really effective that brands have been able to be like, okay, this is a great user experience we can introduce, and it's very clear and simple for us to segment on the back end?
Yeah, and like thinking out loud about the welcome series, I think it's a very, very important part of your SMS strategy. You are welcoming customers in, whether they're customers you just obtained during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or they're just customers that maybe have been following your brand but never subscribed to your SMS. I think it's a great way of introducing it, but I'm seeing a lot more merchants. There's many different options of how you can introduce it, but I'm seeing merchants take two kind of approaches mainly. One is more of a transactional way of like welcoming into the brand. Thank you for coming. Here's a 10% off discount or whatever the case might be, or here's our value prop of free shipping, encouraging, enticing them to purchase. On the other hand, you have some brands who are using the welcome series to introduce their brand a little bit more in detail, kind of going back to the idea of keywords. Hey, this is a story about the founders. Text keyword founders to learn even more. So you're not giving the customer every detail about the founder right there in the welcome series. You're using that welcome series to kind of plug those specific keywords and again, move them onto a section where they're learning more about the brand, the understanding, have they worked with charities? Are they doing stuff in the news or collaborating with other businesses? And from there, then they're allowing customers to kind of, have that choice to make the purchase versus welcome, here's a discount, make a purchase.
Yeah, I love that use case because it kind of replicates 3 or 4 steps from the traditional email welcome flow where you have like an email dedicated to the founder story, an email dedicated to press and UGC, like an email dedicated to those other use cases. And it's also what it was like always drew me to SMS is like if you send that message, it's in the thread, they can go back and always text the other keywords to trigger the other replies, which is also just a really interesting and what I think is a pretty unique user experience moving forward where that's pretty hard to replicate in other channels. So are you seeing any other actions of like, okay, we're dropping people into different site experiences, we're dropping them into different parts of our story. Are there any other either use cases or functional pieces that you're seeing like purchasing or directing them to other places and other resources, like anything in that area?
Yeah, like I think by sending customers to different ways, I think overall merchants are using like responses to being able to text customers back and forth. Like, yes, I'm going to send you to, let's say, the founders, or I'm going to send you to a very specific product page that you're going to make a purchase, but reminding the customers that we can text back and forth as a brand and consumer. I think that's what's helping the overall. But I am seeing more and more brands use, for example, like browse abandonment versus your typical, like you've added to a cart and you've abandoned it. Let's send you a message. This is now focusing, and you can do this at Postscript, focusing on what is the last image that you viewed, what's the first image you viewed, and kind of sending the customers in that direction and saying, hey, you viewed this, this product last. Do you have any questions about this? Maybe the size, maybe the fit, maybe you want to hear some reviews from other people, and using that kind of back and forth and that responses, it's really working across whether using a post-purchase or the welcome series or a specific campaign for a specific product. So I'm really seeing a combination of those different message types, but on top of it, using kind of responses back and forth.
Yeah, to get engagement. And then I'm assuming it has some like using some sort of integration on the back end so that the team is actually responding to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can either integrate with Gorgeous or Zendesk or Rich Panel to kind of have that automated service, depending on the size. If you're a really big merchant, you have a specific team of customer support agents, or you can just set up forwarding to your email. If you're a smaller brand, any customer who texts you back, it can go straight to your email. Then you can reply to them from there. So for the customer, the end user, it just looks like I'm getting a text message back from Wassims cookies or whatever you want, whatever brand it is. But it's when you think about the way things are being done now compared to how we as consumers would interact with businesses maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, I could not reply to a brand. They could not reply to me. I couldn't give feedback and vice versa. So now it's really changed the way consumers are interacting with e-commerce brands. And it's going in the favor of the e-commerce brands are really able to connect and build that loyalty with customers just by having a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I want to quickly jump back to is you mentioned browse abandonment recently rolled out, and I know that that's been a huge product request of from at least from our team for a long time, just because of how
Yeah.
successful it was in email. But I do feel like that's the most controversial flow that any brand really enables, and it's always that hot take. So, what have been some? What's been the feedback that you've gotten so far, and then what have been some success cases and some reasons why brands should enable something like that, and then how do they? Really, the more question is, how do they responsibly enable something like that? Because I feel like it is so much more intimate when you're getting that text message versus an email or just a social retargeting ad.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think we've been waiting for a long time. I'm so happy to see it roll out, and it's working really well. A lot of customers are seeing success. But kind of going back to your point, I think browse abandonment is for specific type of customers. Like not every type of your customer, someone who's not as loyal, maybe hasn't purchased many times, or vice versa. They might not want to get a browse abandonment. So I think for any merchant that I speak to who wants to enable browse abandonment, I think a lot of the first steps is to really sit down and strategize and say, fair enough, we have browse abandonment. I understand how this works. Who do we send it to? Because not everyone is going to want to get the fact that I went on a website, I viewed this last image, and I get a text message about it. Some consumers will really like it, some won't. And I think brands, what they can really do to continue to see success with this is just by filtering, segmenting, understanding like let's send browse abandonment to someone who's a little bit more loyal, someone who's purchased from me multiple times. They're not unsubbing, and that's a little bit more easier versus someone who's brand new and they might get a bit overwhelmed. I'm getting the welcome series, I'm getting a abandoned cart, I'm getting a browse abandonment. So it's a bit of a not a difficult question, but I think it really boils down to the fact of like you as a merchant and how your consumers interact with you. Then you can decide which one of them am I going to send the browse abandonment message to by using user filters and segmenting.
Yeah, that's really smart. I never thought about that before because our strategy, and this is kind of back in the day, was just like let it fly and send it to everybody and just see how much revenue we can drive from it. But they're probably, I think with SMS, there is that important like difference. If you really need to warm that person up, they really need to feel more comfortable with the brand before that is helpful versus invasive. So that's really interesting. And then what are you finding to be effective in those messages? Is it the like classic like here's social proof and here's how a bunch of other people are using it, or is it more of that CS lean and like what can we help you with? Is it like what are you finding to be really effective in those messages?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I feel like it boils a lot of it boils down to like the price at which the product is at. If you have a product that you're selling for $500 and I'm going to send you a browse abandonment, I probably want to send some social proof or some any user generated content or any kind of reviews. Usually, well, I can speak about myself. Well, I'm looking at a product for $500, which I do not purchase. But if I was, I would like to take a little bit more time to like read reviews, understand what's the pros and cons. But in saying that, you can also, if you have a maybe lower price point product that's like fast moving, and then it's a little bit easier to just target those customers and say, okay, hey, I noticed that you were viewing this product. Here's a discount, or here's a little bit more information, or just as a normal reminder, like, hey, you were viewing this product, adding urgency. Don't forget, this sells out super, super quick. So you can kind of take those two routes. One is like urgency, just as a reminder, versus hey, I know you're browsing this, but I wanted to share some more info with you because, I mean, you don't have to say it, but this is a more higher price point product. So it really depends on, I think it really depends on the price point of the product.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I feel like it really depends on also the sales cycle, how far they are in that sales cycle of where they need to get to the next stage. So
Exactly.
I want to quickly pivot just because we are rapidly approaching last ship date here. What
Yes.
is one or two last minute tips that you have for a brand that if they really want to leverage up SMS, they really want to make the most of this next week, how they can really help push towards that kind of wrapping up shipping timelines, knowing that shipping has just been an absolute nightmare for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And we just finished Black Friday now, Cyber Monday, and of course, there's some shipping delays, and that's going to continue on into December and even January. And while you as a merchant or us, we cannot change, in the grand scheme of things, change the whole issues with supply chain demand and the issues that are going on. My recommendation here, and I've seen some more brands move towards this, is just communicate with the customer. If your customer has purchased something, why not text them and remind them like, hey, just a friendly reminder, your shipping is going to be delayed an extra 10 days or 5 days. And while consumers might be mad about that, I think the fact that a brand is still communicating, keeping them in the loop, the fact like, hey, just want to remind you, you're getting your order, it's just a little bit more delayed. And as a thank you, as a apology for this delay, maybe here's a discount for your next order or whatever the case might be. I cannot stress the fact that like communicating when it comes to something that's delayed is super important. Just as a human, like any brand I interact with, I would much rather them communicate with me and tell me your shipping is going to be delayed. And really, as e-commerce brands, there's not really much more we can do from that perspective of like getting more shipments, delivered quicker. We can just really communicate and make sure we're keeping that brand strategy high, even if customers are a little bit mad.
Yeah, definitely. And it was really interesting because Eli from Olipop was on the show as part of our holiday prep series, and he was doing the same thing. And he had an interesting ripple to that piece of advice of send it from like a teammate on the team being like, hey, this is Eli from the company. I'm really sorry that your shipment is delayed, because customers are going to be mad. Like they're not going to be happy that their shipment was delayed, but I feel like they're definitely less mad if you're proactive about it. And then the interesting piece that his little ripple to that was that they're also less mad when it comes from a person versus just the brand in general. And that was just a really interesting take of like, everybody knows that they need to set shipping expectations, but I feel like not a lot of people know how to do it really well. And I think that like combining those two things, making it friendly, making it personable, making it from the team, is that like good combination of like making the most of a bad situation.
For sure. And Eli does a great job at that. And the messaging he communicates with his consumers, I love his messaging, very conversational and agreed. It does, coming from a person versus like just specifically coming from a brand can go a long way. Like I am the owner, I am head of customer support, whatever the case might be. This message is coming from us, because in the end of the day, it's coming from the brand. It might not just be someone specific, but adding a specific title or a name can really help like resonate with consumers and say, okay, this is someone who also is a human behind this text message, who may also be going through some shipping delays that they just purchased from Black Friday. So the fact that we're on the same level, we're able to talk, it can go a long way. And I think the real focus there is around the brand strategy. And I think that's what's going to turn, companies and, 10, 15, 20-year businesses is really going to be down to like the brand strategy, how we keep our customers happy. And yeah, I'm super excited about like communicating shipping delays. I think it's very, very important.
Wow, you heard it here first, folks. Wassim is excited about shipping delays.
I am. It's never been it's never been a kind of a message or an automation or whatever campaign that's like, this is exciting. But the fact that this is such a hot topic, aside from, yes, we've just done all our shopping for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the holidays. One big looming thing is the fact that there is shipping delays. But we, as e-commerce folks or merchants in the SMS space, we have the power now to communicate with customers. And with communicating, you can also turn that into a transactional message where you get customers to, as I said, so sorry about your super long delay. Here's 10% or here's $10 off your next order. You have until the end of the year to do it. So a lot of opportunities that merchants can use in their own advantage, even when there's a negative like shipping delays.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's also that pivotal moment in the customer lifecycle where they either hate you or absolutely love you coming out of it. So I agree with you. It's one of those nice, like you got to rise to the occasion moments. So next thing I want to touch on is you just mentioned like it's really important to retain those customers. And I feel like everybody is kind of like, all right, I'm done. We've been doing this rush for like 12 months, which feels like 9 million years. But I feel like a big thing, and we've been talking about this a lot recently, is the push into January and into the New Year's. So are you all like, how are you seeing brands start to kind of rev up, not just getting through that last ship date, but really setting themselves up for success in that January Q1 of next year timeframe?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of brands, again, every business is going to have busy periods. Some businesses are, January, February, Q1 is, a lot of businesses will think, okay, business is slow. There's a lot of like protein supplement companies or gym apparel companies where this whole idea from consumers like new year, new me, I'm starting on a new, 2022. I'm going to go into the new year. I'm going to change a lifestyle or a diet or something along those lines, it's a really good time for those type of business to capitalize off that time. And so for some brands now coming into December, January, it's going to get a little bit quieter, but there's a lot of brands that this is even bigger than Black Friday and Cyber Monday for them, because, gyms are extremely full, aside from COVID and everything else is going on. I remember back in the day, even when I lived in Dublin, you couldn't step foot in the gym in Q1. There's no point going there. It's been, so a lot of brands are now using the fact that, like, I'm going to sell these supplements, I'm going to sell these clothing apparel. So it's going to get very busy for them during Q1, January, February, those early months in the new year. But again, it goes back to like retaining the customer. Just because, I picked up a customer during Black Friday, just know that there's another influx of shopping that's going to happen in Q1. So still a very, very important time coming up.
Yeah, definitely. So how would you say we probably just blew up our SMS list, and it's 10 times bigger than it was coming out of Q3. So like, what can we really do to start leveraging that up to make the most out of this huge sales period? Because I think it's more than just the like new me, new year brands. I think everybody's making massive life decisions in this like end of year time period, where like there's probably a lot of other brands that if they decided to leverage this up could have a huge spike in sales as well.
Sure. Yeah, I still think, like, regardless of how many more subs you've grown, if you've grown like 10% or like even 50%, some brands are really exploding. They've really diversified their list growth strategy. So they have multiple streams of customers coming in. I would still approach it of like engaged versus unengaged. You have your engaged customers that can be any purchase from +1 to +5. Total spend anything from $100 to $1,000 plus. So someone who's super loyal, VIP, they're my go-to people who, if I have a slow month, I'm going to send them a message, I will get some conversions out of them. But then you also have, even with that 10% or 50% increase in your new list, you're still going to have people who sign up and they're unengaged. So I would still, going into the new year, approach it in that way, that you will have someone who's engaged, a bit more loyal, they're clicking, they're interacting with your keywords, but then you also have someone who, some customers who are not. And I think brands can really take that into their own advantage of, well, either A, cleaning up your list. So with those messages to someone who's a little bit more engaged, maybe reminding them that you can reply stop to unsubscribe, so you keep your list clean, which I don't think is a bad thing. But also, if you don't want to do that and you still are very keen on going after that unengaged list, experiment with it. Have a bit of fun with the messaging. You're targeting people who've never really engaged, never bought from you. So you could give them a really big discount. You could say, you could talk to them about a different talk track versus your typical brand strategy. Really, the point here is to entice them, to kind of get them into the buying funnel. So really, two ways of looking at it. Look at your new list of customers who you've just acquired during Black Friday as an engaged segment, but also someone who's unengaged and just the last time they clicked was on Black Friday when they made a purchase, and we haven't heard from them since.
Yeah. I love that strategy also of like immediately cleaning out the list and immediately keeping things healthy, because I think that's a real struggle for most marketers, is like we just spent all of this money to acquire all these new customers and all these new leads, and it's like painful to admit that like a portion of them are just were not good quality.
Yeah.
So I find it's a really good strategy. And I also love the testing piece of that, of like, how do you think about that of like, I'm at the end of the year, I'm kind of wrapping up this year, and we're probably creating all of our plans to go into 2022. Like, what tests would you run outside of that engagement track to really get myself ready, so that I can just really set myself up for enough, like a good testing in Q1, and just really make sure that I hit the next year like with off the ground running?
Yeah, and like, I mean, I am a big fan of testing. I prefer to make data backed decisions versus like, I'm going to send this one message and everyone's going to buy. So whether it's the new year or Q2 or Black Friday, Cyber Monday 2023, and in the future, I'm always going to push A/B test your messages, test your campaigns, test your keyword replies, test everything you can. You have so many different customers. Not every customer is the same. Yes, they might like your brand. They might have that in common, but there's a lot of differences between consumers. So keep testing it. Test the fact that maybe you want to remind a specific type of customer that you do free shipping. Maybe you want to target customers who've added $50 plus into their cart only, versus someone who added like $10 into their cart. I'm not going to remind them of free shipping. So there's a lot of different ways I would keep reminding customers. Test it. MMS versus calling someone by their first name versus last name. Welcoming someone back to an abandoned cart who's purchased from you before. it's endless. I would be here all day if I went through all the ideas of testing. But the main point is keep testing those unengaged versus engaged customers. There's no real like perfect right way to engage with a customer. The only way, the closest way that you're going to get to like understanding which type of message increases my conversions, my earnings per message, my clicks, it's true testing. It's figuring out which message resonates better with a larger percentage of my list growth of my subscriber list.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always interesting to see how those tests evolve over time and some things change. But putting in a request from the content team now to have Wassim's list of testing, that sounds like a great blog post of just like 100 different ideas of things that you could test.
Yeah.
So one last thing I was thinking of kind of wrapping up this year that I know we were catching up before we started recording was you love pushing reviews for this time of year and capturing reviews from all those people who just bought. Can you explain for someone who maybe hasn't done this before, or why you recommend putting a specific push and a specific campaign to reviews it at this time of year, specifically heading into the new year?
Yeah, I think, tis the season. Consumers and people are a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more happier. I know we've gone through, the last couple of years, COVID and everything else has changed a lot of stuff. But I still think coming into like, after Thanksgiving and now coming into the, December holidays, I think it's still a time where consumers are going to be a little bit on a high, a little bit more happier. So use that time to target your customers and say, hey, thank you so much for supporting us all year round. I would, could you leave us a review, or could you, leave us a comment, whatever the case might be. Use that to your advantage. You've just had a really good year with a bunch of your customers. Again, segment them, target specific customers who have not left you a review, but have purchased more than once, or they've spent a large amount. Target them and say to them, hey, great time of the year for you and your family. Thank you so much. I would love if you could leave us a review. Again, I'm not a content writer, so I'm not the best when it comes to like the wording, but the idea is there, like, holiday, that, period during December, a lot of people are happy with their family, kind of action on that time, leverage it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there is like probably some good messaging around like be grateful, like we're grateful for you. Would you mind leaving us a review? And you could probably get a lot more out of that. And then it just gives you a nice boon of like the same way that you have the sales spike, you can now have a review spike to either new products that you launched. You now have a lot of reviews for them. Old products are just really boosting that overall reviews for the site. So yeah, I think that's great. So what's kind of one last tip or one last piece of advice that you want to leave everybody with of a way that they can really just make the most out of SMS going into the new year?
Yeah, I'd say going into the new year, and this is based on the fact that you just acquired a bunch of new customers during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, coming up in the holidays. Segment that list. Understand that there's multiple different types of consumer personas, but just understand there's ones that are going to be a lot more engaged and they're loyal to your brand, but there's also going to be a bunch of your new subscribers or your current subscribers who are just there for a specific discount. And I think it kind of goes back to the point, and something we really were pushing really heavy at Twilio is sending that right message to the right person at the right time. And this is how you can really do it. Continue to test going into the new year. Send one type of message to unengaged lists, get them into the buying funnel, but then keep nurturing those loyal customers, because they're the ones that are going to turn your business into a 5, 10, 15-year business and keep loyal to your brand. So that, I have a lot of advice when it comes to like the stuff they can do, but I think top of mind for me, that's kind of the approach I would take. And for those brands that are, their business is great during Q1, so your supplements, your gym apparel, or any of those other lifestyle that people are making changes, just understand there's a second wave that's going to come, and a lot more purchases are coming. So be prepared, keep growing your list, because that's what's really going to keep you successful when it comes to SMS marketing. Have a larger list to be able to tap into and text a percentage of them in this way and text another percentage with a different kind of wording or a different type of incentive to make a purchase.
Yeah, definitely. Then you have the feedback to really understand what works well, what doesn't work well, and where we can improve. So got to ask you the quick fire round. I have a feeling I'm going to get some different answers this time than I asked last time. I think last time your recommended book was Why We Sleep. I wonder if it still is. What's one piece of content that you would recommend everybody consume? It could be anything: video, book, blog, podcast. Or you can keep it the same if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I still think sleep is very, very important, and I'm learning that now since being a new father, having my son Emerson, which is great. Now I've shifted more towards some of those baby books, but I'm still listening to a lot of audiobooks about changing the economy and whatnot, and just using that information to tailor that towards how businesses are going. So yeah, still loving the sleep, but I think the baby books are now taking over.
Awesome. What's the one thing I missed? Like if you were interviewing Wassim today, what's one thing we should have talked about that we didn't?
I think, yeah, out of all the stuff we've discussed and all the recommendation testing and engage and whatnot, I still think two of the stuff that we didn't really miss them, but I think I can't stress enough is around shipping delays. Communicate that with your customers. Don't think that just because it's not a campaign that's trying to get them to purchase something is not going to go a long way. That can result in down the line, it can trickle into a sale. So I cannot stress that enough. I know we touched about it today, but communicate around the shipping delays. Let customers know. It's a quick text message. You can set up an automation and have it trigger after 10, 15, 20 days, if there's additional delays. So that would be my piece of advice, or kind of going over it again.
Nice. Yeah. Always invest in the relationship. Who's one person we should have on the show?
Who's one person? Elon Musk, maybe.
All right. I'll see if I can call a DM him and see what happens.
I mean, I think that, I'd say anyone else from I love getting insights from merchants. I know you spoke to Brevity back in summer
awesome.
after.
Yeah.
Great, Dylan's a great guy, great brand, great business that they're running over there. I think there's a few other people within Postscript, maybe that would be great to talk to from maybe more of technical side of like up and coming stuff. No specific names. I'm not going to throw anyone out there, and they might not want to do a podcast. But I think there's a lot more people within companies like Postscript that have another different insight perspective on SMS, where it's going in the future. And I'm very, very focused. Even though I'm focused on the present, I do really want to see where SMS is going to be in 5-10 years. And I know if we get into this now, we might be here for another hour, but someone who can discuss that in a bit more detail, I think I'd love to see that next on your podcast.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I definitely have a lot of ideas, and I'm sure it could be an easy hour-long conversation. And finally, wrapping up, if someone wants to learn more about yourself or Postscript, where should they head?
Yeah, about myself, hit me up on LinkedIn, Wassim Dakik. And if you want to learn more about Postscript, just hit Google Postscript. It'll be the first search, and there's a bunch of content there. You can easily get in contact with anyone from our support team. Again, if you have any questions about SMS or anything with your strategy, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll put you in touch with the right person if I am not that person.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks, Wassim.
Anytime, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with another e-commerce marketer. And always let us know what you think down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you're looking for cutting edge tactics and the resources that we rely on to run our businesses, sign up for our newsletter. We'll include a link down below. As always, stay confident, connect with your customers, and keep crushing it.